Am I able to paint a model actually worthy to sit on that display shelf? What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the first hobby video of 2023, covering a hobby project I did most of in 2022. Sometimes how videos work. Anyway, I am genuinely proud of all the models on my shelf that are actually painted. I just needed kind of a catchy intro to entice you all. But I don't do a whole lot of painting content on this channel, and I wanted to push myself with this particular model. So let me carry you through the process I used to paint my kind of figurehead of the Forge World Archmagos Xenologus Nebuchadnezzar. Now we're going to start off the video here with all of the base coating basically done already, because honestly that's a pretty boring process. It's just I put a color here and I put this other color there. If you actually want a painting recipe video for the way I paint my admech army, let me know in the comments. I don't think it's particularly interesting or useful, but hey, if you're interested, might as well film it. I think in general the painting philosophy behind choosing an army's color scheme is a lot more important, and that's a subject I cover in the first ever Color Theory 40K series, which you can see linked above. Anyway, with the base coating done and a little bit of volumetric highlighting just as a pre-shading measure along the way, I was ready to get started with the next phase, which was freehanding. Specifically the cog pattern on the edge of her robes. Now, the tool I typically use for this process is the Sakura Micron pen. For me, it's a lot easier to control than a paintbrush, and it works just as well on most of my models. Fortunately, not for this one. For some reason, the alcohol-based liquid gold range from Vallejo was reacting strangely with the ink from the pen and not allowing it to dry really in any meaningful way. I could just smudge it away with my finger even minutes after laying it down. So I had to switch to the dreaded brush-based freehand. For this, I was pulling out the big guns. That's right, those holiest of brushes. A sable hair Kowalski genuine brush. I had literally never used this brush before, or any brush of this caliber. I've always just been sticking to cheapo synthetic brushes to do all of my brush work. But for something like freehanding, I felt like it was justified. I pulled out the brush and very carefully began to trace the cog pattern along the edge of her cloak. First starting with one long vertical line around the inside border of the golden part, and then dashing a dotted line in the middle between the gold and the black. Actually a little bit past the middle, probably around 2/3 of the way. After those dashes were complete, it was just a matter of connecting those to the inside line and then thickening that line out a little bit more until it looked good. All in all, not too difficult of a process in terms of pattern replication. This is, I would say, a fairly easy freehand by most painting standards, but it was my first time doing it and I was still quite nervous. Luckily, it ended up turning out pretty well, I think. Not perfect spacing in between all the cogs, but at a distance, honestly, no one's gonna notice. After that, we turn to my good friend, streaking grime. That is right, this model is getting grimed up as well, because it wouldn't be a toasty paint job without a little bit of that grime. But first, I tested some mineral spirits against the golden parts because, again, I wasn't sure how they would react with this alcohol-based gold, which I used, by the way, because it has very solid coverage, and I wanted to make this model have the best looking gold possible. After seeing that there was no reaction, I went with my usual all-over grime process, covering the model in head to toe and wiping it free with mineral spirits, just letting it sink into the recesses and overall providing a thin sheen of grime over the raised areas to tie all of the colors together. After that process was done, all there was left was the OSL, which is used with fluorescent Vallejo orange paint. That's really a key there, is to go over it with white and then a fluorescent paint, which actually brings in light from the ultraviolet spectrum and converts it into the visible spectrum, creating the illusion that it's actually exuding more light than it's taking in, aka being a light source, even though in reality it's not. It's a really cool trick, and even in person, not just on camera, it translates really well and is super effective. I've had several of my friends ask me legit if I was using LEDs to light my models, but nope, it's just fluorescent paint. And then get some basing done and a little bit of detail work, actually using the pen this time around because it works on normal acrylics just fine. And this is where I would normally call the model. This is the level that I paint most of my troops and elites, and all of every other piece in my army has been painted up to this point, and this is where I would typically call it quits. However, I wanted to push this one a little bit further, and the first way to do that was to reestablish some of those highlighted regions. So I got out a couple of colors. German brown black from Vallejo. Actually, all of these colors are from Vallejo. I'm not sure why I'm specifying that. Stonewall gray, and literally any white paint. I chose German brown black here specifically because I wanted to kind of retain the warmer tones of the streaking grime over the original just plain black paint. So I use that as a basis for my black highlights instead of just neutral black. Putting all three of these paints onto the palette, I mixed them all into a variety of gradients and experimented with what looked good on which surface. The German brown black and Stonewall gray created a kind of nice, almost purplish highlight on the blacks, which I enjoyed quite a bit, and I applied this sparingly since black stuff is still essentially black. But there were some places that were raised straight up towards the sky, which is where my light source deigned to be. And it's also where I recommend most people put their light sources on their models, since that's where lights exist on the table. After that, I selected the gray and gray-white areas and started a highlight of those with a half and half mix of Stonewall gray and dead white, applying mostly volumetric highlights here and very sparing edge highlights just to separate some of those upper-facing edges. However, I don't really believe that much in edge highlighting specifically. I think often it can actually take away from the illusion of lighting, so I only did it very sparingly on those specifically raised surfaces, and the rest was just done volumetrically, aka shading as though these were actual 3D objects in 3D space, because that is what they are. After this step of reapplying highlights was done, I was feeling pretty good about it. I used a little bit of some hatching motions to create a more textured look on the cloak, something that I don't think I 100% got down correctly, but it looks alright in most places, so I'm gonna call that good for a first try. But there was still some more work to do with round 2 of our enamels, bringing back streaking grime as well as glossy engine oil. I started to use this round to more specifically lay out some detailed grime streaks and actually use the streaking effect as advertised instead of as an all-over wash. Then applying some engine oil to some places that I thought some kind of, liquidy parts might be leaking out or something like that, just add a little bit of gloss and a little bit of detail. And then the final kind of secret weapon in this process, MIG wet effects. This is a high gloss finish, almost a varnish, and I applied this to the gemstones around my kind of heretical Archmagos' Eldar technology she had grafted to herself. And this gave them the perfect appearance of an opaque, shiny gemstone, which is exactly what I was going for. Much better than the matte finish. I didn't need to highlight these at all. The gloss finish really kind of did all of the heavy lifting for me there. With all of those details done and all the touch-ups touched up, I felt like this model was really in a really good place and I could finally call it finished. Is it gonna win a Golden Demon? No, but it doesn't need to. I think the best model I've painted thus far, and I am really happy with the way it turned out. So without further ado, let's check out the finished, fully painted version of the Archmagos. Thank you guys for joining me on this painting video journey. It's not really something I've ever done before, so hopefully it was interesting and fun for you guys to watch. And let me know in the comments, do you guys think I pulled it off? Do you think this is what you would consider a display quality model? If you want to see more painted projects, I'm probably going to be doing more of it. So be sure to stay subscribed or hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single one. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to give me a like as well, because it really helps me and the channel out. And I will see you guys next time. Peace!